everybody. Welcome to the Enlightened Investor, your home for economic and financial enlightenment. And, today we got a great show for you. Backed by popular demand, we've got Dr. Amit Sinha here with us from Bradley University. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things like luck, success, outcomes, failures, and really making better investment decisions for you and yourself, and all kinds of stuff like this. There's a lot of FUD activities, uncertainty right now in the marketplace, and we just hang tough, stay in there, hang in there, and go see your financial advisor and keep with your plan, I guess, right? So, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about today's topic, Amit, on really like luck versus success. And last night I was watching a volleyball game of Nebraska, my alma mater, and they played Pitt. And at the end of the game, all the statistics were the same, like the same amount of kills, the same amount of like blocks, and Nebraska ended up winning. But the outcome was interesting. But it was like, was that luck or skill? And the success was Nebraska did win. But what can we say about luck and skill in sports and also in the investing world?
Yeah, I think this is a very fascinating topic to talk about, and I don't know how long we have or how long we want to talk about that. After a while, we may end up. That's enough, but this is real fascinating.
We'd like to keep it under 2 hours. Just kidding.
Yeah, but I think in terms of where you want to start off with, and I think this is where what do you define as success? And I think that as my life, as my teaching has evolved, as my understanding of finance has evolved, my definitions of success has also changed and evolved. I mean, there's different definitions from about success, and there's this one that I found on LinkedIn by someone who's I don't know if I butchered his name or whatever, but I certainly wanted to give him the credit for coming up with this definition. It says, attaining wealth, prosperity, or fame through maybe have a process of that leads to an accomplishment. And by and large, that is a popular definition of success. But applying that to finance may be a little different, or you can't probably just use this definition of success for that.
It would definitely be different, I think, from a practical standpoint for a financial plan and someone's life planning, because success in that realm really isn't. I guess you attain the wealth to achieve your goals, but it's more about just achieving your goals, and not all those are money oriented. Some of them are, but when you get to the real meat of the matter, it's more about your family and your health and your relationship with others. But yeah, success, I guess, is meeting your goals too. So in the financial realm,
and so if you're thinking about a financial portfolio, that there's a purpose for that financial portfolio. And if you look at the sports analogy, the sports analogy for success in that field is the winner takes all. And if you apply that to finance and investing, winner takes all. What, you want to spend all your money buying lottery tickets? That one chance that you win, you've just really crushed all the other possibilities. And so, if you think about success, really, in life, or in at least a portfolio, it's supposed to be such that you are kind of unnoticed. You have a good life. Your portfolio may be such that you have sufficient money to do whatever you want to do in retirement, or whatever other purpose that portfolio you are trying to have for, such that that aspect of your life is taken care of, that even you don't notice, and you're not a burden to society, so to say, and your purpose, the purpose of that portfolio is served. And that way you're not going to gain fame, because hardly anyone is going to notice that. And so how do you come up with a portfolio or a set of investment opportunities such that you achieve that.
Yep, yep. And that reminds me of the book, The Millionaire Next Door, right? That the success for the typical millionaire is to not be flamboyant and show it off, but yet to have just a steady time in the market rather than timing the market and having a good plan. That's one of the foundations of success, I think, in the financial world.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also what you see though is people judge skill or success with an investment process or product or manager or whatever. And most people that I've seen through the years, they base that off of past performance. Truly, and they don't even have a relative benchmark to measure that past performance off. It's just maybe the market, because no one's going to really get into value or smaller size or international type. And at times, what they need to really look at is that the Securities Exchange Commission says, hey, past performance is not indicative of future performance.
Say that.
And people don't realize the randomness and the uncertainty and how luck and skill play in that. And that's kind of what I thought this would be a great topic. You look at that continuum of luck versus skill, and you have, gambling, like you mentioned, in the lottery on the left side, and to the far right, you have playing basketball and you have playing chess with skill, and way over to the left, along with the gambling part, is investing. And I don't think people realize that how much a lot of these investment returns for certain managers or funds or whatever are random, and it's not skill.
Yeah, could you?
Yes, and I think I have something to add to that a little bit. But let's look at what the definition of skill, and this is from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. And this is something that you acquire from training, experience, and practice, which is also important. And when you're talking about gambling, investments, and at the other end, skill, this is a continuum. And in some of my classes, I've also talked about with my students and asked them, how are you going to turn a gambling event into an investment opportunity? And at least the concept is rather simple, but whether it would work out or not, the implementation of that is rather difficult. You want events to be completely unbiased as far as the probabilities are concerned. And when you're talking about skill and luck, in a sense, when luck and skill may be on the similar part of the continuum, is that, at least in terms of some of the popular understanding, is that you're trying to change or improve the probabilities of a particular outcome. When we are trying to change that outcome on our own, then it is not totally an unbiased outcome. And to be a pure gamble, it has to be an unbiased outcome. For example, the probabilities of winning a lottery in the United States in the Mega Million or the Powerball is 1 in 292 million. I think something like that. Yes, and it's totally unbiased. Nobody has any influence of that. Try using skill to win a lottery. Okay. Not going to happen.
Like flipping a coin, getting heads 100 times.
Yes, yeah. Though you cannot discount that it could happen.
Correct.
Randomness. Yes, right. And that's the point I was trying to make, is that you need to have an unbiased probability of even that happening. Whether that happens or not is immaterial.
So wouldn't you agree then, people, because people have a tendency, they like cause and effect. So if you did have that guy that flipped 100 coins or won the lottery, everybody, and they come up with, well, he picked his birth date and his daughter's wedding or anniversary or something, and the reason they did the numbers. We like stories and we like cause and effect, even though it may not be logical.
Yes, absolutely. Spurious correlation.
Right.
You might think, I flipped 100 coins in a row today. This is my lucky day. I should go buy a lottery ticket. Okay. So with that, let's talk about this definition of luck. And this is the this definition is from dictionary.com, but there's also an article that I came about yesterday or maybe a few days ago. This is called The Luck Factor by Richard Wiseman, and I think I forget the journal that it was cited in. But the paper has a story about Warren Buffett and someone else. I think I can look up the name as well.
That was Hellsberg. You sent that to me. It was Hellsberg Jewelers.
Yes,
Yes.
Hellsberg Jewelers.
yes. So he was walking on the streets of New York, and somebody says, "Oh, Mr. Buffett," and this guy had never met Warren Buffett, and he went and talked to him, and lo and behold, he was able to sell his jewelry firm to Warren Buffett. Okay, so you could say that's a lucky event. And so in this paper also he has some principles of people being lucky. But if you read through this, again, what I feel is this is not about that unbiased probabilistic event. If you read through this and we are trying to make ourselves or feel lucky, then we are actually not looking at a totally unbiased probabilistic event, but rather biasing our probabilities towards a particular outcome. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it is kind of very difficult as human beings to even conceptualize and retain in our minds that they may not be, for probabilities to be unbiased, there has to be no connections between two different probability events.
Yeah, I've got a kind of a question on that, like the self-fulfilling prophecy. I think that has a lot of weight in a lot of different settings, whether we're talking about your individual life and sort of you're taking control of your individual life, the internal locus of control. But how does it doesn't really work out necessarily so much in the investing world. Like we know a lot of people that are very successful entrepreneurs, and they think they can transform that success of that entrepreneurship success into their financial success. And it doesn't transfer. That's such a hard concept.
Yes. And I think with that, I skipped over this particular slide.
That's kind of reflected in the paradox of skill.
Yeah.
For accomplishment, you need to have some kind of a specific goals to reach, and the success or the accomplishment is whether you have been able to achieve that or not. And so even in this paper, Wiseman, that he's written, and this, I think that you want certain outcomes to happen, and you are trying to develop maybe the skills or the opportunity set and be attentive to the process that that event that you want has kind of you increase the odds of that
happening.
That happening, and that's really what you could do. But then it is again not a totally probabilistic event. So what that kind of leads me in terms of your thinking is this book by Gabriel Oettingen. This has kind of nothing to do with finance, but it in a way it does. And she has worked a lot about on this and over maybe a 20-year period or so. And she's a professor, I think, at New York University. And so this is a website that you might want to look at. Whoop My Life. And this,
yes, funny. Whoop My Life.
This has to do with this wish, outcomes, obstacles, and planning. So what you want, okay, and what are the possible outcomes, what are the obstacles, and then you plan. And if you relate to what Wiseman in the previous slide has mentioned about lucky events, there's similarity. Not exactly that, but there's a pattern there which is similar. And continuing with what you were talking about in terms of moving your skill set to investing and all. I jumped ahead a little bit on this one, but if you think about the investment policy statement for individual investors. This is from the CFA.
CFA Institute.
And relate this to the Whoop My Life.
Can I add something?
Sure.
I've been at RIA for 20 years. I've never had a client walk in yet with an investment policy statement from their advisor. Almost everybody that comes to me has another advisor. Now, we craft an investment policy statement for every client that we have, that goes along with their plan. But just saying.
Yes.
Not a lot of planning about that out there.
Exactly.
Put in writing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I fully
You
understand.
might be held responsible then for something, or actually say you have a formal process,
Yeah.
Let's just throw it on the wall and see if it sticks.
Yeah. But if you look at the elements of this, so you got the scope, purpose, governance, investment returns, and risk objectives and risk management. Okay. You have, if you look from the definitions of the lucky event or definitions of the Whoop My Life. There's similar content in both content for both of those perspectives in this investment policy. So does that kind of give you some?
Absolutely.
So can I get you guys to chime in on this? Two professors.
Yeah.
I got to read from this a little bit, but I mentioned go back to paradox of skill. I think this is a good one because the paradox of skill says as skill improves, performance is all more about practice about luck, right? It's the opposite of that because you'd be like having Alabama playing Georgia recently or whatever.
They're so close.
And also there was some statistics here. 60 of the last 80 Grand Slams in tennis over the last 20 years, 3 players have won, okay? So if you take that into investing and you look at, they have 5,500 mutual funds out there. Of that, 23 beat the S&P index 8 years in a row.
Incredible.
So, it's a really good analogy when you compare those two.
Yes, but I think that when you look for sports events, that may not be, that's not really the perspective that, at least personally, I feel shouldn't be with investments. Because some of the things that we look at, say even politics, elections, sports events, it's the winner-take-all situation.
True.
But you can't apply that concept.
No, that's a good point, yeah.
In finance and investing. And, it's the totally opposite perspective that you want to have when you want to have a successful investment portfolio.
Not in a way. You do want to increase your odds, though.
You do want to increase your odds, but do you want to shoot for the edges, or you want to be in the middle of the...
Yeah. If you want to shoot for the edges, you're going to go buy Tesla or something, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just kidding. Or whatever.
Or Rivian, like Mr. Producer over there.
I get you.
Yeah.
So you want to be in the middle. Be in the middle, though. Don't be out in the tails.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about that country club investment policy.
Yes, right. That's good. You can brag. It's boring to talk about a total stock market index or something when you can be talking about Tesla or Rivian.
Rivian, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just
Bitcoin.
average. I'm just normal.
Smoking it.
Just to add a little bit humor. I'm just normal. I'm just average, but I'm also just mean.
Hey, but that's funny.
Only 2 professors can do that.
Yeah, that's dry humor for us. Well, we were talking about pre-show a little bit too. Like, hey, I invest in that Kathy Woods ARK K fund, and that's been like past performance. Doesn't necessarily mean that this year's been a terrible year. Everything's in her wheelhouse has been getting crushed. Growth has been getting crushed. So yeah, some years it's fun to be with the country club, Mike, and say, hey, look at I've got Tesla, but really when it comes down to it, that this normal distribution, you want to shoot for the you want to
shoot for the middle,
exactly,
not for the edges. Mm-hmm. And if you're shooting for the edges, you never know which side of the edge you're going to end up at.
Yeah, crash and burn, right?
Yeah, and so for example, if you look, the market return that it gives you, if you take that as an average market return, someone is overshooting that average, and someone or some firms are below that average. That's why you have what the market is giving. But all of these firms that are listed, they have this perspective of shareholder wealth maximization. They have to take risk. But when you take risks, some of them are going to fall and you are going to lose money. And so the bets for some of the other firms may be positive and the outcome would be such that shareholder wealth is maximized. But how can you know beforehand? We don't have a crystal ball to say, hey, this firm is going to be the one that is going to succeed. Looking back, we can very well say, hey, that firm succeeded. Totally different perspective.
Or that
Which is we're going to kind of get into that more in the second video and get into the randomness and uncertainty. I think it would be better to split this in two.
Absolutely. And that's why I think when you're talking about success in investments, it is being average, being normal, such that you're not noticed.
Right.
That is the real success. And if people want to, because our society is kind of going towards that direction, that if you're not in that winner all category, you haven't won.
Well, I'll be honest with through the years, because we use a quote evidence-based approach, kind of passive with asset class investments and index funds blended together. I've had other advisors when they look at our approach, they say, "Why do you want to be average?" But then they don't. When you look at the statistics and look at the funds and the percentages and how many actually beat average, it's not average, right?
Yes.
Yep. There's a lot of funds that just die off because they get rid of them, Mike. They just
Well, yeah. Then they use the peer group comparisons instead of using the historical. I think we've talked about this in previous ones. When you look at, they list maybe 20 different asset classes for all the mutual funds, and what they bring is they bring the survivorship bias back into their database. And for 20 years, literally the average on every asset class is over 85% that don't even beat their relative index benchmark. Talking about luck and skill there. I mean, is that skill? Where's the skill there on that 15% and the persistence of that 15%?
And how long does
persist?
it? Yeah, how long does it have to take to persist before you actually say it's skill?
Yeah. Well, so some of these questions are not easy to answer. And I think we had talked about earlier at some point that, in terms of the investments and trying to figure out what decisions you got to make, our role as finance professors are to give them the skill sets that, for example, if you're developing pro forma financial statements to estimate the intrinsic value. My students end up being very good at that. And they can make projections, income statement, balance sheet, cash flows, and do the time value of money calculations and find the intrinsic value and compare that intrinsic value to the market price and figure out whether it's an underpriced or an overpriced stocks and make investment decisions. They can do that. But I don't teach them, hey, look at your crystal ball and find out what would be the growth rate in sales for this particular corporations or that particular corporations. You learn that someplace else. You figure that out someplace else. Once you have figured that out, plug into my spreadsheet that you've learned, and voila, you have the intrinsic value. But if you get those assumptions wrong,
that's what I was just thinking. I mean, because there's so many moving parts. Even if you get all the assumptions right, and tomorrow Russia invades
the external market changes,
Ukraine, or China invades Taiwan, or Omicron 2 takes over and we shut down the market. There's so many other variables that are in play. That's what it makes the markets pretty darn efficient. Is there's all these smart people, but there's also a lot of randomness. How do you beat it?
Yeah. And so one of the issues that I think we also have to keep in mind, and this is where what really is finance. So we talk about this, and what do we mean by that? And I've kind of understood and thought about it for a long time, and this is what really I have come up with, that finance is just data-driven intuition. And so you got all this data, you got your spreadsheet modeling, and but the assumptions that is going to, and I think we had that story about the chances of winning a lottery is 1 over 292 million. And the chances of a shark attack is, I think, 1 in 5 million. So for me, I think that I want protection from being attacked by a
shark.
shark. But would you advise me to go buy a shark repellent? But you could advise me to at least spend my money to buy a Powerball ticket, which is now
Lottery
around
ticket.
300 million or so.
Right, yeah.
So you see, if I was just doing a decision based on data driven, I should buy a shark repellent because that is a higher probability event to happen than compared to the lottery.
So let me ask you this, because I don't get that when you say data-driven intuition, though, because we talked about when we had you back the last time, we talked about biases and cognitive disorders, so and how they can lead even managers astray when they're making financial decisions. And we're talking about the odds of success and everything else. So wouldn't it be more about the base rates and the odds of success and less about intuition?
Well, yes and no. Okay, because you come to that base rate based on the data.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
but if you have nothing else, okay, that base rate is something to go with. Like in terms of the random walk concept, right now this price is the best prediction of what the price could be next period. So that is there, but if you just use that, then again, you're not applying the intuition part of it. And I think you were talking about the no, I had a visitor in one of my finance classes, and he was talking about someone I think he was an expert in the chemical industries, and he would study, and however he would study, he would say, hey, this is going to happen in so many years or in so many months on this particular stock. And after a while, that would have happened. But it wasn't totally data driven, but it was based on data, but he would apply his he would apply his intuition. And one of the problems that we kind of have in finance, and it's kind of we are trying to develop and model this, is how do you actually even first, if you have to model intuition, you got to allow for that and to identify some of the biases that kind of helps us go astray from what ought to be, quote unquote, the rational decision making.
Well, which leads us back to the rational decision-making process. If you're going to be building a portfolio or picking a manager, build your portfolio, are you going to follow the fact that most intuition and stocks fail to beat just a relative index, and where you can just diversify that risk away?
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question. And I think I got another slide. Yep.
So
that's our favorite one.
We'll have to put that one up so people know what we're looking at.
We've been talking about that one since Wednesday. So
So if you think about all the possible outcomes.
Yes.
Okay. And if this is all the risky events, the likely events, the unlikely events, the shooting for the edges. And if you want to kind of succeed in investment decisions, you want to have that approach. At least initially, you want to identify or invest in all the risky events, but then slowly narrow down to really what you want. Okay, and I can clean this up a little bit. So this is a little easier to watch. And then you have, say, some other individual who may have that perspective that they don't want to go that far out, but only want to have part of the spectrum that they could invest in.
Okay, so if you're retired, you've accumulated your nest egg, all your money, which one are you going to go with?
Well, it would depend upon the size of the portfolio that I would end up with.
Keep the bulk in the middle and put a little bit on the outliers then?
Possibly.
Play a little bit then?
Possibly.
Which is fine, right?
Yes,
Play
yes,
a little bit of
yes.
money?
Because once I retire, my biggest concern would be that am I going to have sufficient or not? But to ensure that I have sufficient, I might actually have to invest some, not all, some, in the outer parts of the possibilities if you're talking about the unlikely event. But the bulk ought to be such that it gives me the security.
High
Like
odds,
steady
right?
steady
Odds
returns.
high.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And
plus you're a
this is-
CFA, you gotta. It's in your nature. You gotta.
Oh, I
You
won't.
gotta try and hit a home run.
Yeah, maybe I won't go that far.
Yeah,
But
then you can go to the
You
country
can't
club
help
and talk
yourself. When you get
smack.
that CFA designation, you can't help yourself. You gotta try and hit that home run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but you get the
Yeah. So this might be a good place to cut and get into randomness.
Yeah, I think so. So good discussion here on luck versus skill, and thanks for watching, folks. There's a lot more to be said, but definitely we see a lot of investors put their money into like things with past performance, but we know that that's such a challenge to continue with that past performance of.
Well, but also they
outperforming.
have a manager probably or an advisor if it's an investment strategy that's picking a lot of approaches like we're talking about here towards the end, to hitting the homers rather than making sure you get around the bases.
Yeah. So, folks, thanks for hanging with us to the end, and we're going to have another show here on part 2 with Dr. Amit Sinha coming right up.